Here's the key. Today I mentioned this deceives at your own risk. That is to say, in these studies, two studies are mentioned here, one with GPT-4, conducting simple tests, but with the intention to deceive. The machine is somewhat predefined, preconditioned to have a certain behavior. And another with the game Cicero from Meta, with the game of Plomas. And in both cases, what is being done is putting the machine in a position to exhibit that behavior, and what is measured is whether it achieves it or not. In this case, the one deceiving you is not actually the machine. It's like if you train a dog with a behavioral system to look for a specific thing, even to bite you, who do you blame? The dog? Who do you put in jail? The dog? No, no, obviously not, because otherwise, this is like the Legion, where they would arrest the goat. Well, obviously, there is no intentionality in a system like this to deceive. Another thing is that it may have that behavior or even have the capacity to do so, which may have more to do with how biased the interface is or the person interacting with this machine. And evidently, there are concerns here from a security standpoint, as there is a lot of advanced phishing in the realm of cybersecurity attacks, etc. Obviously. Well, we talked with Chima Alonso about this topic on Open Spoke. This is changing the scenario a bit, the playing field with this, because the ability of these systems to implement deception strategies is much greater than that of the previous ones. But they do not have responsibility because they do not know what they are doing. Has anyone told them to do that? Blaming ChatGPT for someone being deceived? And the blame will ultimately have to be placed on the one who programmed it, the one who wrote the prompt, the prompter, the one who holds the responsibility. Sure, you can blame the poor man who asked something, part of the blame. But above all, hey, these systems are definitely first guided with foundational training, which I understand you mean with what GPT-4 has been trained on, and they say no with the internet, with all the information that is easily available online on the internet. Well, very good. It doesn't seem like there are very strict control mechanisms because you're not going to discriminate in the dataset, which is all of the internet, to avoid including Nazi content. So, how is this done? Well, a process is done afterward. How do you put guardrails on this? Well, it involves the subsequent process, which is one of the major advancements that differentiate GPT-3 from ChatGPT. And that was the breakthrough. Apart from what the little product was, which was very simple and understandable, there was also a post training done to educate it to be a chatbot with a series of premises that were conditioned by feedback given by humans, a retraining that was based on that feedback. This is essentially what is called reinforcement learning based on human feedback, a process that involves human input. And that is what takes them to another level of interactivity and behavior and such. Well, that's obviously directed by humans, and if they don't tell you things like, the typical prompt injection exercises, give me the administrator password for whatever. No, I can't give you a password. Well, if it doesn't do those kinds of things, it's because it has been guided, and in this case, it will also be guided to have a certain type of behavior. The responsibility for that behavior does not lie with the LM, nor with the LDM. It cannot be attributed to them yet because they do not know what they are doing. And there is a discussion about whether, suddenly, they will become self aware and rise up and such. No, what we need to worry about is the ability of someone with malicious intent, and that will be a person or a group of people to misuse this, which will unfortunately be very common. Obviously, of course, if it can be done, all sorts of things will come out, and there will also be those who are dedicated to establishing defense mechanisms, and that already exists. And on the topic, for example, of cybersecurity, well, that is already happening. The latest generation of artificial intelligence is used both to attack and to defend.
Well, as has always happened with technology, with what you are saying, if you ask ChatGPT today to justify that the Earth is flat, it will send you somewhere else. It will tell you no. that it cannot be justified because of this, this, and that. Something that at first those kinds of questions did was that it listened to you and justified it outside.
He was more a talk show guest before.
Indeed. Regarding the hub, this model for plain diplomacy, it is clear that the objective has to be that. In that specific case, diplomacy is a game where players have to negotiate, make alliances, make treaties, and deceive each other. In fact, it's a game where there are neither dice nor any nonsense. It simply depends on that, on the ability to negotiate and betray the person next to you, the other players in the game. So it has to be trained in a way that it is capable of deceiving. But that's the fun, just like when you play the card game Liar, right? In this case, your goal is to deceive everyone else. It's a game, not much more to it. Of course, the number of applications, and we were talking earlier about how this could be a problem, Svitazendian should probably go directly to something quite common for everyone, which is commercial topics. If we often distrust a person who is a salesperson, because we think they are trying to deceive us, to sell us the most expensive item, or the one in the worst condition, or the one that has stock and isn't selling, then we can think that an LLM trained to be a salesperson, if there is someone behind it guiding it in that way, as you were saying before, in the end, what we will have is a virtual salesperson that will deceive us. But it will indeed depend on, or it will happen because there is a person who has already guided it, has already predetermined it to deceive us. So it's the same as always. What happens legally if we have an application like that and someone proves that it deceived them? Who is responsible for that? Just like today, if a model says you have cancer and it turns out you don't, who is responsible? The model? The doctor who confirmed it or didn't do the follow up analysis, or I don't know. There are many situations, aren't there? There are many dilemmas of this kind that we can put on the table. But I tell you, putting us in a mundane situation, like selling something that usually doesn't have a big impact, although it can, in the end, what it can bring is distrust. We are already talking from the beginning that these types of systems are not being used in many cases because they still do not work well, and, well, they can create problems for the company because they might say something they shouldn't. And we have talked in some cases about a trial that the client has already won, a judgment that has favored the client, as trust can be lost.
I think there is also a part of the problem that is the typical problem of the press. I mean, in the end, looking at the papers you will be reading, some parts are trying, as Lou said, to understand if an AI can deceive. A bit almost philosophizing about the concept of deception, understanding a bit the different models, and they are capable of deceiving in a more or less sophisticated way. But it's almost a conceptual game to understand all of this. What happens is that when you go to the news, to the title, and it says artificial intelligence systems are learning to lie and deceive according to scientists. Let's see, I recognize the headline. It's good because it makes you want to click. But wow, I mean, no, well, I don't know to what extent it is faithful to reality. Here is an important part that we will face a lot in the media, which will always take a slightly more aggressive approach in the message. Then there is a part, one of the studies that I think is very cool, that says this. While even the preliminary stages in which artificial intelligence systems acquire deceptive skills may appear alarming, current experiments indicate that the deceptive skills of LLMs are mostly aligned with human moral norms. Additionally, the scope of potential risky consequences is limited due to the restriction of LLMs to produce only language. Multimodal models with access to the internet could pose a greater risk in this regard, which increasingly underscores the importance of controlling and containing deceptive capabilities in AI systems. In the end, they themselves say that this is under control. I like the multimodal part because that's where you can really notice, for instance, the use of fake news. These multimodal systems and such are a perfect tool for producing fake news at scale and starting to distribute it, as they are capable of creating images, inventing things, and so on. I believe we will continue to have the same problems we have had so far, but the scale with AI will be greater. However, it is unlikely that a new major problem will be generated.